This is my dust collection cart. It's been 4 years in the making. Welcome back to Advanced Geekery. My name is David Gewirtz, and today we're going to talk about a dust cart that's been 4 years in the making. What you're going to see in the build video is video from 2020 and 2021, which is when I originally recorded most of the build for this thing. And the videos kind of sat there because I never considered this completed enough to tell the story about building it. And that's been what's kind of interesting about it, because as I built it, I would use it and I would add features and I'd change things. And over time, it just kept evolving. And each time I had an idea to do something else with it, I was like, well, let me do that and then I'll do the video. And let me do that and then I'll do the video. And 4 years went by and I've been using the heck out of this thing. It's really useful. And it's fairly simple in its construction. It's mostly 1x3s connected together by pocket screws, which is why there's no plans for this. It's not rickety. It's rock solid, but it's not exactly reproducible either. My skill 4 years ago isn't quite as good as it is now, and my skill now isn't quite as good as it should be to provide plans for something like this. So just use this as inspiration. Use it as an idea of how to think about what you might want in a dust collector, or how to think about a project and the ideas of what you could put into a project if you start to just give it some thought. So what I want to talk about initially is the building of the lower section of the cart and then this ladder area. And the ladder area is interesting because it's got French cleats on it. Every other one points in a different direction, which allows me to use the French cleats from the front as well as from the back. So I also wanted to say that this is not the first dust collection cart that I've built. I built one called Frankenvac, and Frankenvac was based on a hand truck, a laundry cart, and a lawn chair. And I built that, used that for about a year, and it had some issues, and so I decided to build this. I'll tell you that whole story starting right now. This is Frankenvac. He's been around for about a year and has come in really handy in sucking up all the dust that I produce when trying to do woodwork and things like that. It's actually, as crude as it looks, it's actually relatively sophisticated because it uses this 3D printed dust collection system that is actually parametrically scaled for each of the 3D object, for each of the power tools that produce dust. But it has two critical flaws. The first critical flaw is that it's tippy as heck. And so if I start to pull it, it wobbles way more than I'm comfortable with. And I'm regularly pulling on one of these tubes or pipes to plug it in or something like that. And I'm afraid it's going to tip over, possibly right into the table saw. It's not the best. The second interesting flaw is that it doesn't move sideways or out. It's built on top of a hand truck. And so getting it from this position kind of requires, and you're going to sort of see me balance with one foot and kind of tip and kind of guide. And that's as far as I got. And then tip it back a little bit more and try to spin it. And all the while, it's really tippy and not terribly stable. And it's actually kind of painful on my back. So my goal is to create a new Frankenvac, or actually a non-Frankenvac, but a dust collection system that I make out of wood that supports all of this, that works with the custom 3D printed dust collection system and rolls, because everything should roll in a shop, isn't tippy, and is easier to move around. In addition to the 3D printed dust collection system, there are actually a couple features in this that are really useful. The biggest one, and the one that most people notice first, is this lawn chair up here. And what the lawn chair does, in addition to providing a surface to mount all of the 3D printed adapters, is it holds the hose. And you can see that there's these brackets up here that kind of hold all of the hose out of the way when I'm moving it and when I'm using it. When I first put this together, I first put it together up to about this high, which is where the hand truck ends. And this is the Cyclone, and down there is the regular old shop vac. And it was fine. It actually held together, but the problem is that this cord was just everywhere. I had no place for the cord to be managed or whatever else. So in building the new one, a key thing has to be hose management as part of the solution. Another thing this has is a basket. I mean, this is a laundry basket, but it has a basket, and it holds a bunch of the regular vacuum parts. So we want to have a place in the new design that will hold that. Now, obviously, it also has to be able to hold the Cyclone and the shop vac itself, as well as a cord and some of the other things that are just basics. But the key thing is that the hose management needs to be built into whatever system I do, because the hose management is a big part of the problem and a key necessity for what this dust collection system, or really what any good dust collection system does, unless it's a fixed dust collection system. And I'm not ready in my shop to run, big 4-inch pipes and build dust collection all through the place. I'm much more ready to move this around to whatever set of tools I'm using, or to stretch the cord, I keep calling this a cord, stretch the hose to where I need it to be. So with that, let's get building. So I'm going to start working on this by cutting the lower portion of the cart, basically the area down here. And the reason for that is I'm not 100% sure I'm comfortable with my measurements for either the dust collector or the Cyclone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build just a small amount of the cage that goes around the dust collector and Cyclone, and hopefully what that will do is that will tell me whether my measurements are right or not. And if they're not, then I will adjust them before I've used up a ton of my wood. So that's my first step, is to just cut down a few pieces to try to get to the right size. Now what I've got here is, not only do I have my plans, but I have a cut list, and I've taken a subsection of my cut list and I've marked off the pieces I need to make to be able to make the small test piece to start with. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to be making a few small cuts just to get started. Well, all the cuts have been made for this project. There are 4 or so additional pieces that have to be cut out. There will be 2 angle supports that I'll cut out once the unit is put together, because I want to measure it against the unit. And there are also 2 tabletops that I will cut out, but again, I want to measure them based on the final size of the unit. But the miter saw is unplugged, and now I have a mess. Because here's the thing, what happens is, and you don't often see this in a lot of YouTube videos, but it's the reality, is that doing this stuff creates clutter, creates a great deal of mess. So my next job will actually be to drill a ton of pocket holes for the joinery, but I can't do that until I've cleaned up my mess. So today's job is mess cleaning, and then I'll go on to doing some pocket hole joinery. All right, it is the next day, and the workshop has been cleaned. It's now ready for me to start working on hundreds of pocket holes. My first task is to drill pocket holes into these big pieces of wood, and you can't lift them up this way to use the traditional pocket hole jig. So I'm going to be using this handheld thing, which I'll show you in a minute. But before I get started, I want to point out the shirt. Because tonight, right now, actually this afternoon, we're at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the last day of 2020. So I am wearing this, not ironically, but seriously, because this is the last day of 2020. If you see me in this shirt in the future, we're in the future. We're out of this year, and then it will be ironic. But I wanted to point out that we are 8 hours away from this being history. 2020 will be gone in 8 hours. Now, by the time you're watching this, 2020 will have been gone for days or weeks. But for me, right now, this shirt says we are about to leave 2020. Yay. All right, so I'm going to move the camera. I'm going to show you how I drilled the pocket holes using this rig, which is basically a portable version of the traditional pocket hole jig where the pocket holes go in here, but this time it's just going to mount on the edge of those boards. And with that, bye-bye 2020, hello any other year. All right, so I've made a lot of progress on this thing, and we're about to do a very big step. That is put the actual two canisters, the vacuum unit and the cyclone, into here. But I need to finish up the upper layer of this first. That is putting one more stretcher on that end and one more stretcher in the front. And once I've put those two pieces on, I can then actually use this. Now, granted, the ladder hasn't been built yet. This is going to be the French cleat ladder, and will hold the various various hoses and hose ends and possibly other tools and so forth. But once I put these two pieces on, and I put the two canisters in here, I can actually use this, move it around, and get some functionality out of it. So in effect, what I'll wind up doing is I'll hook the sander to it, and I'll actually be using it to manage itself instead of what I've got down here, which are the two canisters down here and aren't really movable right now. And they haven't been since I took them off of Frankenvac 1.0. So next step is to put those two pieces on and then actually load it and see if it works. All right, so what I'm going to do is do it from this angle. Try to remove the top of this. Yeah, there we go. All right, this is the actual cyclone. And this is the actual sawdust. So let's bring this down here. Which, once we get the hose out of the way, I'll show you. So this does, in fact, fit nicely in there. So what we want to do is we want to then tuck this in. And we're going to do that. There is an opening left for it, see? So that's actually doing what we want. The opening's in the right spot, so I'm just going to snap that back in as it's supposed to. And this hose will, let's move the camera a little bit, come through here and go in there. And there you go. There's the vacuum and the cyclone all in its cabinet. Now I don't yet have the hose mounting for this thing, which is going to go, oops, there's my foot, up here. But at least this can be put together here. Let's get this onto the cart. And the cart can be rolled around. In this case, I'll just tuck it back here for the moment. Well, that's quite an accomplishment. Didn't go exactly the way I wanted. I kind of wanted that front piece that I had to take out, but you know, part of the reason I did this design this way was to allow me some flexibility, and clearly it needed it, and clearly by doing so, it's working. So it won't affect its structural integrity any. And I now have a dust collection cart that I have to finish. Okay, so I need to make a cut on this board. I need to make the board 21 inches wide, and it is currently, I believe, 24 inches wide. Yeah, 24. So I need to make it 21 inches. So let's mark that here. Now let's mark that here. Use the straight edge to join the two. All right, so let's move the saw back from back there because I don't want to move things around too much. Let's take the track, and I'm going to place the track right on the line. So it's actually harder to see the line than I wanted it to be. There we go. So now I'm going to move this right up onto the line so I can see the line. And I'm going to just see the line there. And I can just see the line there. To double check that, I'll just do a quick measure, set my measurement, and come over here. It actually goes back a teensy bit. There we go. Okay. So there we are. We're ready to do that cut. And I made one more mistake when I did my initial cut, and that's that I didn't put on safety glasses. Right up front, when I use the camera and I'm narrating, you can't really, I find I lose track of what I'm doing. And part of that is the safety glasses, which is never a good thing. Okay, so now I do want to change one thing on here. I'm cutting through 1/2-inch plywood. So I want to bring this down a little past 1/2 inch, like right there. All right, here we go. Bring it all the way back, plugging it in. I'm going to set the kickback thing so that it won't go backwards, and I'll make my cut. Ready? And that is a seriously smooth cut. There we go.
This program is sponsored in part by the Advanced Geekery Weekly newsletter. Want exclusive access to my latest ZDNet articles, behind-the-scenes updates on my projects, and must-watch YouTube videos curated just for you? How about fascinating reads from around the web and a chance to have your own project spotlighted? It's all in the newsletter. And the best part, subscribing is absolutely free. Don't wait, click the link below to get your weekly issue and make it awesome.
Okay, for the next section, apparently I didn't provide any description or voiceover, so it's just going to be a nice little montage of the remaining steps in building this. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you some of what's been accomplished and some more of the story of what's involved in getting this thing working. Okay, so we're back, and you see this mostly the same. The difference is that I changed up almost completely how these dust collection adapters work. These now toggle with a screw instead of requiring you to use, let's see if I can get this back in here, without requiring you to screw it together, because I found that sometimes the hoses wound up having to get tangled up. So I changed this thing up completely, although I still have some of the old adapters because I haven't fully made it through every single device and made a new adapter for it. I added up on top a camera arm because I found that what I really have here is a mobile tower that I can put wherever in the workshop to do stuff with, like hang a camera off of it or use it to balance a dust collection arm or whatever. It's a tower. On the back, I have storage for my track saw, my track saw track, the big track, and I also have storage for a 4-foot fence that I use to extend my table saw fence, so that my table saw has a little bit more support. So both of those are stored on the back, even though this is nicely against the wall. It provides essentially another storage wall in the workshop. So I've been really happy with it. I mean, I've been using this for every project for now about 4 years. So I invite you to go out and when you build something, think about what you could do with what you have. Like, for example, I had French cleats here, so I thought, I need a place to store my little clamps. Why not make a little tiny clamp holder? So I did. When I realized I wanted a tower to hold this and these, I thought, well, what can I do with this if I have this real estate being used up? Well, maybe I'll make a French cleat ladder wall. In the back corner over here, I have a bucket, essentially, a wooden bucket, which is where I'm storing all of the extra vacuum cleaner parts. So each of these things were built around my need and what I want to do with it. And I recommend when you build something, you do the same thing. Give yourself a little bit of flexibility. I even have over here a little remote control that turns on and off the vacuum. And it's a little 3D print that holds the thing. So many little additions to this, many little features that fit just exactly what I want. I'll probably redesign pieces of this again, like the hose is annoying me a bit, so I may change up how I manage the hose again. But there you go. There's my dust collection cart. You've seen it in most of my videos. And for Advanced Geekery, my name is David Goertz. Go out there and make something awesome.